Hi, friend. Today I thought I'd briefly talk to you about buying your first home, whether it makes financial sense or not. Now, most of us aspire to have our own home. It's a sign of being stable in life, or it's a sign of being successful in life. So there's a lot of emotional aspects comes to buying your first home. But I'm going to talk in today's video just about whether it makes financial sense to own a home or to continue renting. So there's two key aspects I'm going to cover in today's video. The first one is called amortization and the second one is the 5% rule. So both these key financial facts will apply to most Western economies. So if you're looking to buy a home here in the UK or in America or Australia, so most Western economies, these two key principles will apply. So the first part is amortization. If you look up at amortization in a dictionary, it actually means it's a period in which debt is reduced or paid off by regular payments. So just like as a mortgage is paid off in regular intervals. And there is a complicated maths equation to work out the amortization, which goes well and truly over my head. But if anybody is interested, I'll put a link to that in the description box below. The way amortization works with an interest payment is the initial few years you pay off more of the interest and less of the capital, and the more years you pay off your mortgage, you pay less interest and more of the capital repayment. So here is a chart that shows it very well. As you can see, it's a 30-year mortgage repayment, and let's forget about the interest rate. It shows at 5%, but let's just put that aside. But the red line shows the interest paid, and as you can see, the initial few years you pay a lot of the interest, and as you carry on down the years, by the end of the 30-year period, you pay very less interest and more of the capital repayment. So you can see the longer you own the property, the cheaper it becomes to own because you pay less interest over years. On to point number 2, which is the 5% rule. So there's a lot of added expenses associated with buying a house, and this usually equates to about 5%. I will explain the 5% expenses broken down, and I'll also show you a working example of this in a minute. So the 5% expenses is broken down into three categories. The first category is the interest payment, which usually is around the 2% mark. So this is pretty easy to understand. It's the cost associated with owning a home, the interest that you paid for the mortgage. The second part of this 5% rule is the additional expenses associated with the repairs and the maintenance of the property. And this usually sits at around 1% of the property value. So the boiler might break, the carpet might need replacing, the roof might need fixing, the toilet might need fixing, there might be a broken tap or something. So this is just the upkeep of the property, and this usually varies from year to year depending on how old the property and things is, but it usually sits at around 1% of the value of the property. The third part of this 5% is the added cost to buying, which is usually sits at around 2%. So this is the additional cost when you exchange on a property. So some of us may have stamp duty, most of us will have conveyancing costs or solicitors costs. Some of us will have the mortgage arrangement fees and things. Some of us might have moving fees. So this is the extra 2% that is associated with when you exchange on a property initially when you're buying the house. I'll just show you a working example of the 5% rule, and it'll help you understand it better. So here we are on the Rightmove site. I'm sure if you're familiar with home buying and home purchase, you would have at least visited this site once. So I've put a random postcode close to where I live, so I'm familiar with the area. And I've put it, I wanted a 3-bedroom, and I wanted a semi-detached, and go. So when I filter from low to high, these are the properties available to me. And because I'm familiar with the area, to buy, I will go further down. So I'm sort of happy with this house price at 220. So let's look at the calculator and look at the 5% rule for a house price of 220. So if I do 220,000 into 5%, so mind you, this 5% is the additional expense associated with buying a house. So you still have the mortgage repayment side. So your capital repayment is still there. You still have the bills and the other additional expenses. So this is the extra charges you would pay to own a house. So that is about £11,000 per year. So they divide that by 12. And it's about £916 per month additional expenses that we have per year to owning a house. So let's just compare that briefly to renting a house in the same area. So back on Rightmove, so this time under renting, and the same postcode and things. So I want, again, a 3-bedroom house. So I'm just browsing down to see a house that I would be happy to live in. So this seems a nice enough property that I'd be happy to rent. And this comes in at around £850 per month. And as we've worked out, it costs us 916 in additional expenses to owning a house. So does it actually mean that there is no sense absolutely in owning a property? No, not really. I'll break it down a little bit further. So like I've already told you with the amortization, the longer you own the property, the cheaper it becomes to own a property. As well as the second part, the 5% rule, the additional 2% expenses when you exchange on a property, this gets watered down the longer years you own the property. So usually the cutoff is between 5 and 7 years before it becomes more financially sensible to own a house versus renting a house. But we all know and we all understand that owning a house is not just a money game. There's a lot of emotional pleasure that comes from owning a house. But what I'm trying to explain is try not to rush into buying a house. Make sure your life and your job and your children and your school and everything is fairly stable for about 5 to 7 years before you choose to buy a house. So I hope I've given you a little bit of food for thought for deciding to buy your first home. If you've liked this video or if you know of anybody who's looking to buy their first home, please share this video with them. Please like, share, subscribe, and check out these other videos that might give you a little bit more understanding about the home buying process. Thank you for watching me and stay safe. Bye-bye.